Human psychology operates on principles that transcend gender, yet certain dynamics of attraction and influence have been observed consistently across cultures and time periods. This document explores the psychological mechanisms behind compelling presence and the fundamental principle of self-mastery as a foundation for authentic influence. Rather than manipulation, we examine how genuine self-development and understanding of social dynamics can create natural magnetism. The concept of destroying one's weak self speaks to a universal human challenge, overcoming the aspects of our personality that limit our potential and authentic expression. When someone has conquered their internal weaknesses, their insecurities, neediness, and reactive patterns, they become fundamentally unshakable by external circumstances or other people's opinions. This inner strength manifests as an attractive quality that draws others naturally. Part 1. The foundation of unshakable presence. The paradox of non-attachment. Marcus had always wondered why some men seemed to effortlessly attract attention and respect while others, despite their best efforts, remained invisible or were quickly forgotten. The answer he discovered through years of observation and personal development lay not in what these men did, but in what they didn't do. They didn't chase, didn't seek validation, and didn't compromise their core values for temporary approval. This principle of non-attachment forms the bedrock of authentic influence. When someone is internally complete and doesn't require external validation to feel worthy, they emit a subtle but powerful energy that others find compelling. Women, particularly those who have experienced neediness and desperation from men, find this self-sufficiency refreshing and attractive. The psychology behind this is rooted in scarcity and value perception. When someone appears to have abundance in their emotional state, when they seem content and fulfilled regardless of external circumstances, others perceive them as having access to something valuable. This creates natural curiosity and desire to understand or experience that same sense of completeness. David noticed this shift in his own life when he stopped seeking approval from his romantic interests. Previously, he would text immediately after dates, plan elaborate gestures to impress, and constantly worry about whether women liked him. The moment he decided to focus primarily on his own growth and satisfaction, treating romantic connections as pleasant additions rather than necessities, his dating life transformed completely. The mechanism here involves what psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. When someone is consistently available and eager, they become predictable and their attention loses value. However, when someone's attention and presence feel earned rather than guaranteed, each interaction carries more weight and significance. The power of selective attention. Sarah had dated many men, but Michael was different. He didn't shower her with constant compliments or always agree with her opinions. Instead, he listened intently when she spoke about things that truly mattered to her, offered thoughtful perspectives that challenged her thinking, and seemed genuinely unimpressed by superficial attempts to gain his attention. His attention felt valuable because it wasn't freely given to everything she said or did. Selective attention operates on the principle that what is rare becomes precious. When someone distributes their focus and appreciation indiscriminately, it loses impact. However, when someone demonstrates clear standards for what captures their interest, their moments of genuine engagement become significantly more meaningful to others. This isn't about being dismissive or rude, but rather about having authentic preferences and boundaries. When a person knows what they value and responds accordingly, others can sense this authenticity. Women often report being attracted to men who have standards because it suggests these men won't accept less than they deserve, which implies they have high self-worth. The psychological principle at work is selective reinforcement. When praise and attention come rarely but meaningfully, they have far more impact than constant, undiscriminating positive feedback. This creates what behaviorists call a variable ratio schedule of reinforcement, which is known to be the most powerful form of behavioral conditioning. Emotional independence and its magnetic effect. Tom learned this lesson during a particularly challenging period in his life. After a difficult breakup, instead of immediately seeking another relationship to fill the emotional void, he spent 6 months focusing entirely on developing his own interests, friendships, and personal projects. When he eventually began dating again, women consistently commented on his different energy and how comfortable he seemed with himself. Emotional independence doesn't mean being cold or distant. It means being complete within oneself while remaining open to connection. This state is attractive because it suggests that any relationship with this person would be a choice rather than a need, a partnership rather than a dependency. Jennifer found herself increasingly drawn to a colleague who seemed equally content whether he was socializing with others or working alone on projects. Unlike other men who seemed to require constant social validation or who became visibly uncomfortable during quiet moments, he appeared genuinely at peace with his own company. This self-sufficiency made his voluntary attention feel like a gift rather than a desperate offering. The psychological appeal of emotional independence lies in its rarity and its implications. Most people struggle with their own company and seek external sources of entertainment, validation, and emotional regulation. When someone demonstrates that they have developed these capacities internally, it suggests emotional maturity and stability, qualities that are inherently attractive for long-term partnership. Creating psychological space through unpredictability, predictability, while comforting in established relationships can be deadly in the attraction phase. When someone's responses and behaviors become entirely predictable, they lose the element of mystery that keeps others psychologically engaged. The most compelling individuals maintain an element of unpredictability within a framework of reliability. James discovered this accidentally when his work schedule became irregular, making him less available for the constant texting that had characterized his previous relationships. Rather than causing distance, this unpredictability seemed to increase women's interest in him. They began reaching out more frequently, seemed more excited when they did spend time together, and often commented on wanting to figure him out. Unpredictability works because the human brain is wired to pay attention to novel stimuli while ignoring routine ones. This is an evolutionary adaptation that helped our ancestors survive by noticing changes in their environment that might represent opportunities or threats. In social contexts, this translates to increased attention and interest in people whose behavior patterns aren't completely mapped out. The key is strategic inconsistency within a framework of core values and principles. Someone might vary their response time to messages, alternate between deep conversations and light banter, or switch between being highly social and preferring solitude, but they remain consistent in their fundamental character and treatment of others. Maria found herself constantly thinking about a man she had met who seemed to embody multiple personalities in the best possible way. Sometimes he was the life of the party. Other times he was contemplative and introspective. Sometimes he was incredibly romantic. Other times he was purely practical and goal-focused. She never knew which version she would encounter, which kept every interaction feeling fresh and engaging. The art of controlled vulnerability. Vulnerability has become increasingly recognized as essential for deep human connection, but the timing and degree of vulnerability can dramatically impact its effect. Strategic vulnerability, sharing meaningful personal information at moments when it feels earned rather than desperate, creates profound bonding experiences. Richard learned to distinguish between vulnerability that builds connection and vulnerability that repels it. Early in relationships, he had made the mistake of sharing his deepest insecurities and fears as a way of being authentic. This overwhelming disclosure often pushed women away because it felt like emotional dumping rather than genuine sharing. He learned to reveal personal information gradually in response to demonstrated genuine interest and reciprocal sharing. True vulnerability from a position of strength is incredibly attractive because it suggests both depth and courage. When someone who appears self-sufficient and confident chooses to share something personal, it feels like being invited into an exclusive space. This creates psychological intimacy without the burden of neediness. The difference lies in the energy behind the sharing. Vulnerability from weakness seeks to elicit sympathy, rescue, or validation. Vulnerability from strength seeks to create genuine human connection and understanding. Women instinctively sense this difference and respond very differently to each type. Lisa remembered the exact moment she became deeply attracted to a man she had been casually dating. During a quiet conversation, he shared a meaningful story about overcoming a childhood fear, but he told it with a sense of personal victory rather than seeking sympathy. His willingness to be real, combined with his obvious personal growth from the experience, made her feel both trusted and inspired. Part 2. Advanced Dynamics of Psychological Influence. The push-pull dynamic and emotional investment. The most psychologically engaging interactions contain elements of both attraction and challenge, interest and restraint. This creates what psychologists call approach avoidance conflict, where someone feels simultaneously drawn toward and slightly uncertain about another person. This internal tension generates significant psychological engagement. Robert mastered this dynamic by learning to balance validation with challenge. When a woman shared an accomplishment, he would genuinely acknowledge her success while also asking questions that pushed her to think deeper or consider new perspectives. When she sought his approval, He would offer it for qualities he genuinely admired while remaining unimpressed by attempts at superficial impression management. This approach works because it mirrors the internal experience most people have with themselves. Moments of self-confidence alternating with periods of self-doubt. When someone's external feedback matches this internal rhythm, it feels psychologically familiar and engaging rather than threatening or boring. The key is maintaining genuine interest and respect while refusing to become predictably impressed by everything. This requires developing one's own strong sense of values and standards, so the appreciation feels earned and authentic rather than manipulative. Amanda found herself increasingly invested in a relationship where she never quite knew where she stood, but in the best possible way. Her partner clearly cared about her and enjoyed her company, but he also had his own life interests and standards that didn't revolve around her. She felt simultaneously valued and challenged to be her best self. Scarcity principles and available management. The principle of scarcity suggests that people value what is limited more than what is abundant. In interpersonal relationships, this translates to the importance of maintaining one's own life interests and schedule rather than becoming completely available to a romantic interest. Peter learnt this lesson when he noticed that his relationships became less passionate whenever he made himself entirely available to a partner. The women who had initially been excited to spend time with him gradually began taking his presence for granted and seemed less engaged during their interactions. When he began maintaining his own schedule and interests, prioritizing his personal goals alongside the relationship, the dynamic shifted dramatically. This isn't about playing games or being artificially unavailable, but about maintaining a full, rich life that includes but doesn't revolve around romantic relationships. When someone has genuine reasons for not always being available, meaningful work, friendships, hobbies, and personal development, their presence carries more weight. The psychological mechanism involves both scarcity and the human tendency to want what we can't have. When someone's time and attention feel limited, each moment shared feels more valuable. Additionally, people tend to assume that someone who is in demand by multiple aspects of life, career, friends, interests, must be particularly valuable. Catherine noticed that she felt most attracted to men during periods when they were busy with important projects or goals. Their focused energy and the fact that she had to fit into rather than dominate their schedule made their relationship feel more exciting and dynamic than relationships where she felt like the man's primary focus from the beginning, creating emotional contrast and memorability. The human memory tends to retain experiences that involve emotional contrast, moments of high and low intensity, surprise and variation. Relationships that maintain a steady, predictable emotional tone while comfortable often lack the psychological impact that creates lasting attraction. Michael discovered that his most successful relationships involved natural emotional variety. Sometimes they would have deep, serious conversations about life and goals. Other times they would be playful and lighthearted. Sometimes they would have passionate moments of connection. Other times they would maintain comfortable distance while pursuing individual activities. This emotional variation keeps relationships psychologically engaging because the brain pays more attention to changing stimuli than to constant ones. Additionally, the contrast makes positive moments feel more positive and creates anticipation for future interactions. The important distinction is that this contrast should arise naturally from genuine personality complexity and varied interests rather than from artificial mood manipulation. Authentic people naturally have multiple dimensions: serious and playful, social and introspective, passionate and calm, and allowing these different aspects to emerge creates natural relationship dynamism. Rachel realized she was most drawn to relationships that felt like emotional adventures rather than emotional plateaus. The men who intrigued her most were those who could be intellectually stimulating during dinner conversations and playfully competitive during activities, deeply supportive during challenging times and appropriately challenging during comfortable times. The psychology of pursuit and being pursued. There's a fundamental psychological difference between pursuing someone and being pursued, and understanding this dynamic is crucial for creating attraction. The person doing the pursuing becomes psychologically invested through their effort, while the person being pursued may appreciate the attention but doesn't develop the same level of emotional investment. Daniel learned to recognize when he was doing all the pursuing in a relationship, and how this impacted the dynamic. When he was constantly initiating contact, planning activities, and driving the relationship forward, women seemed to appreciate his efforts but didn't develop strong feelings of attraction or attachment. When he learned to step back and allow space for women to express their own interest, the relationships became much more balanced and emotionally engaging for both parties. This principle is based on the psychological concept of effort justification. When people invest effort into pursuing something, they tend to value it more highly to justify their investment. Conversely, things that come too easily are often undervalued, regardless of their objective worth. The practical application involves learning to express genuine interest while maintaining enough personal boundaries and independence that the other person has space to pursue as well. This creates a more balanced dynamic where both people are investing in the relationship's development. Nicole found herself most attracted to men who showed clear interest in her while maintaining their own sense of direction and purpose. She wanted to feel desired, but she also wanted to feel like she was choosing to be part of someone's already fulfilling life rather than being expected to become the center of their world. Status, confidence, and social proof. Human beings are inherently social creatures who use various cues to assess others' value and desirability. Social proof, evidence that others find someone valuable, can significantly impact attraction, but it must be authentic and naturally occurring rather than artificially manufactured. Jonathan noticed that his attractiveness to women increased significantly when he began excelling in areas he was genuinely passionate about. As he became known for his expertise in his field, developed a reputation for integrity in his friendships, and began receiving recognition for his contributions to his community, women began responding to him differently. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, he was simply becoming genuinely impressive. Authentic status comes from real accomplishments, skills, and character qualities rather than from material possessions or artificial displays. When someone has developed genuine expertise, contributed meaningfully to others' lives, or overcome significant challenges, this creates natural respect and admiration. The key is focusing on becoming rather than appearing. When someone's energy is directed toward genuine self-improvement and contribution, the resulting confidence and competence become naturally attractive. When someone's energy is directed toward managing others' perceptions, it often comes across as try-hard or insecure. Emma found herself attracted to men who were respected by others for legitimate reasons: their work ethic, their character, their skills, their kindness to others. This social proof was compelling because it suggested these men had qualities that would make them good long-term partners, not just temporary romantic interests. Part 3. The integration of self-mastery and authentic influence destroying the weak self. Internal transformation. The concept of destroying the weak self refers to the ongoing process of identifying and overcoming the aspects of one's personality that stem from fear, insecurity, and limiting beliefs. This internal work is the foundation upon which all authentic influence is built, because external behaviors without internal transformation often come across as manipulation or pretense. Marcus spent 2 years deliberately confronting his deepest insecurities and fears. He noticed that his neediness in relationships came from a fear of abandonment rooted in childhood experiences. His people-pleasing behavior stemmed from a belief that he wasn't valuable unless he was useful to others. His jealousy arose from feelings of inadequacy and comparison to other men. Rather than simply trying to change his behaviors, he worked on addressing these root causes through therapy, meditation, journaling, and deliberate exposure to situations that triggered his insecurities. As he became more comfortable with himself and less dependent on others for validation, his relationships naturally became healthier and more attractive to potential partners. The weak self includes patterns like seeking validation from others, making decisions based on fear rather than values, avoiding challenges that might lead to growth, blaming others for personal problems, and needing others to behave in specific ways to feel okay. Destroying these patterns doesn't happen overnight, but each small victory builds towards genuine self-mastery. This internal transformation manifests externally as unshakable confidence, emotional stability, clear boundaries, and the ability to remain centered regardless of others' reactions. These qualities are inherently attractive because they suggest someone who can be a stable, trustworthy partner capable of handling life's inevitable challenges. When Anna met someone who had clearly done significant personal development work, she could sense the difference immediately. He didn't need her to respond to his texts within a certain time frame to feel secure. He didn't require constant reassurance about her feelings. He could discuss problems directly without becoming defensive or attacking. His emotional stability made her feel safe and free to be authentic herself. The paradox of genuine leadership, true leadership in relationships and social situations, comes from service rather than dominance, from inspiring others rather than controlling them. The most attractive leaders are those who help others become better versions of themselves rather than those who need others to remain small to feel important. Stephen learned that his attempts to establish dominance through disagreement, one-upmanship, or controlling behavior actually made him less attractive and influential. When he shifted toward leading through example, encouragement, and creating positive experiences for others, people naturally began looking to him for guidance and companionship. This type of leadership attracts high-quality people because it suggests someone who is secure enough in themselves to invest in others' growth and happiness. It demonstrates abundance thinking rather than scarcity thinking, confidence rather than insecurity, and maturity rather than ego-driven behavior. The practical application involves focusing on how to add value to others' lives rather than how to extract value from them. This might mean being the person who organizes interesting activities, introduces people to valuable connections, offers helpful insights, or simply creates a more positive atmosphere wherever you go. Jennifer was drawn to men who seemed to naturally elevate the people around them. They weren't trying to be the center of attention, but their presence made social situations more enjoyable. Their insights helped others solve problems, and their energy brought out the best in people. Being around them felt inspiring rather than draining. Integrating strength and compassion. The most compelling individuals successfully integrate seemingly contradictory qualities. They are strong yet compassionate, confident yet humble, independent yet caring. This complexity makes them more interesting and suggests emotional sophistication that can handle the nuances of mature relationships. Robert developed the ability to be firm about his boundaries while remaining kind in his communication. He could disagree with someone without attacking their character. He could pursue his own goals without dismissing others' needs. He could be competitive in appropriate contexts while being collaborative in others. This integration requires genuine personal development rather than simply adopting behaviors. Someone who has done the internal work naturally expresses strength and compassion simultaneously because they're not driven by internal conflicts between these qualities. The attraction of this integration lies in its rarity and its implications for relationship quality. Most people lean heavily toward either strength or compassion, creating either intimidating personalities or overly accommodating ones. The combination suggests someone who can be both a protector and a nurturer, both a leader and a supporter. Michelle found herself most attracted to men who could be decisive when decisions needed to be made, but collaborative when input was valuable, who could be challenging when she needed to grow but supportive when she needed encouragement, who could be independent when space was necessary but connected when intimacy was appropriate. The long-term perspective on attraction and relationships. True mastery in relationships comes from understanding that sustainable attraction is based on genuine compatibility and mutual growth, rather than manipulation or artificial techniques. The most fulfilling relationships develop between two people who are committed to becoming better versions of themselves and supporting each other's development. Christopher realized that all his previous attempts to create attraction through psychological tactics had resulted in relationships that felt effortful and ultimately unsatisfying. When he focused instead on becoming someone he was proud to be and attracting people who appreciated his authentic qualities, his relationships became dramatically more fulfilling and stable. This long-term perspective shifts the focus from getting something from others to becoming someone others naturally want to be around. It's the difference between taking value from relationships and creating value in relationships. The most attractive people are those who are on a clear path of personal development, who have meaningful goals and purposes beyond romantic relationships, and who can enhance others' lives through their presence and influence. These qualities create lasting attraction because they suggest someone who will continue to grow and contribute throughout a long-term partnership. Sarah found that her most successful relationship began when she was focused on her own growth and goals rather than on finding a partner. She met someone who was similarly committed to personal development, and their relationship became a partnership in mutual growth rather than a dependency or distraction from individual development. Maintaining authenticity while understanding influence. The ultimate goal is not to manipulate others into being attracted to you, but to become someone who naturally attracts the kind of people you want in your life. This requires understanding psychological principles not to exploit them, but to ensure that your authentic qualities are expressed in ways that create positive connections. The difference between manipulation and influence lies in intention and outcome. Manipulation seeks to get something from others for personal benefit, often at their expense. Influence seeks to create mutually beneficial interactions that enhance both people's lives. Understanding attraction psychology helps you avoid common mistakes that hide your genuine attractiveness, like being too available, too eager to please, or too dependent on others' approval. It helps you express your authentic personality in ways that create intrigue, rather than predictability connection rather than dependency, and mutual respect rather than one-sided pursuit. The most sustainable approach is to use this understanding to become more genuinely attractive rather than to create artificial attraction. This means developing real confidence rather than faking it, building actual value rather than appearing valuable, and creating authentic scarcity rather than artificial unavailability. When David finally integrated these principles authentically, his dating life transformed completely. But more importantly, his overall quality of life improved dramatically. He felt more confident in all areas, had better friendships, was more successful professionally, and experienced greater internal peace. The relationship benefits were a natural byproduct of becoming a more developed person overall. Conclusion: the unshakable foundation. The man who destroys his weak self, his neediness, insecurity, fear-based patterns, and dependency on others for validation, becomes fundamentally unshakable by external circumstances or others' opinions. This internal strength manifests as natural magnetism that doesn't require techniques or tactics to maintain. The principles explored in this document work not because they trick people into attraction, but because they help individuals express their most attractive, authentic qualities while avoiding common behaviors that inadvertently repel others. They create space for genuine connection to develop naturally rather than forcing artificial chemistry. The ultimate irony is that those who need these principles least, those who are already internally complete and genuinely confident, are the ones who naturally embody them. The goal is not to fake these qualities but to develop them genuinely through consistent personal work and authentic self-improvement. True mastery in attraction and influence comes from becoming someone others naturally want to be around, learn from, and partner with. This requires ongoing commitment to personal growth, authentic self-expression, and contributing positively to others' lives. The reward is not just better romantic relationships, but a more fulfilling life overall, and the deep satisfaction that comes from becoming the person you're capable of being. The journey of destroying the weak self and building unshakable inner strength is challenging but ultimately liberating. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of seeking others' approval and allows you to build relationships based on genuine compatibility and mutual respect. In the end, the most attractive quality anyone can possess is the courage to become authentically themselves while contributing positively to the lives of others. 7 hidden Machiavellian tactics that make women addicted to your presence.